Here we go. So again, welcome everyone. It's our second installment of the Sanders County Democrats monthly virtual cinema series, and we've entitled it What Unites Us. Joining us today are Donna Martin, we hope, Chair of Lincoln County Democrats, and Diane Magone, Chair of Mineral County Democrats, because we're hoping with this particular cinema series that we can also reach out to our neighboring counties that have similar demographics, economics, etc. And me, I'm Mindy Farrell, if you don't know me already, and I'm the current chair of the Sanders County Democrats. Again, thank you all for being with us here today. Goodness. And now I'm going to have to get on a little bit of a, I wonder what happened there. So I did have a little speech ready to go, but my speech disappeared for some reason and I can no longer grab it. There it is. Okay, the intention of this 6-month virtual video series is to get past the barriers of division that we've heard so much and the partisanship in our county particularly, and then focus on the topics that unite and support us here in our county so that we're working from ground up in northwestern Montana. The topics will include building our local economy and jobs, preserving our cherished landscapes and providing needed health care, promoting quality public education, and integrating sustainable energy sources. Each of these programs, as I said, will be recorded, and we are soon going to be putting them up via YouTube on our website and on our Facebook page. We hope that you will, if you have questions, access them there this coming week. After we have a little bit of video and presentations, you'll be given the opportunity to interact and ask questions to any of our speakers, either by typing into the chat if you're a fast typist, or by using that response or icon at the bottom of your screen and you raise your hand. Because there's enough of us on this screen, we won't necessarily see you raising your hand. So instead, there's an icon at the bottom. And it's pretty clear to raise your hand and you'll be put in the queue. And lastly, after we watch a little and talk a little and listen to you, we hope that you're going to leave with a hopeful note of possible action. And there's one that's happening this week. This month's program, we're focusing on how federal funds fuel our economy, the influx of federal funding to our hospitals, our nonprofits, our schools, and our local government, and to the small businesses here is actually what keeps our rural counties' economy thriving. And with us today, former Senator Jim Elliott will be leading this conversation. Also joining us is Gail Surratt, Director of Sanders County Coalition for Families, and Clara Nyman, who's the CFO or Chief Financial Officer of Clark Fork Valley's Hospital. There's other leaders in our county that are also on this Zoom, and we welcome them all. Guiding us as MC will be Deb Ahatz, and we can't wait to get started. So let's recognize the important role of federal funding. 169 local businesses and entities in Sanders County were recently given awards from the 2020's CARE Act. And Sanders County Dems, if you haven't seen it, paid for a half-page ad in the Ledger this last week. We listed and thanked all of those that received those awards and kept our county's economy strong. In our state legislature, our biannual budget was over 16 billion, and out of that 9.5 billion is sourced from federal money. It's a big thing. And as we all know, the focus of this conversation today is about the infrastructure bill, which was just recently passed in 2021 to support the projects and the programs that have fallen into disrepair throughout the country. And so I'm going to get started with a brief video. I need to do a little bit of logistics here, if you'll bear with me. I'm not as fast on Zoom as some other people might be, but I get there. If I haven't muted you and you are on, if you are unmuted and we could hear you, I would appreciate if you would mute yourself in the lower left-hand corner. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it takes me a little bit. Here we go.
In 2007, under-engineering, lax regulation, ever-increasing static load, combined with ongoing inadequate inspections, led to the deadliest structural collapse in Minnesota's history. When we head out on the road, whether it be our daily commute, a trip to the store, or simply for fun, we are, by default, putting ourselves at much greater risk due to the inherently dangerous nature of driving on its own. The risks of driving are due to many factors, most of which, though, drivers are expected to remain keenly aware of when sharing the road, stopping at red lights, yielding to traffic, observing speed limits. A number of factors we're expected to keep an eye out for at all times. However, the integrity of structures used for carrying this traffic is, quite reasonably, not something we're ever expecting to crumble out from under us. On Wednesday, August 1st, 2007, though, at roughly 6 p.m., a busy time for evening commuters, the main deck portion of the I-35W bridge in Minneapolis, with more than 100 occupied vehicles and 17 construction workers aboard its deck at the time, collapsed suddenly into the Mississippi River below. This catastrophe claimed the lives of 13 people, and 145 more would be injured. 1,000 feet of the nearly 2,000-foot-long, 8-lane bridge had fallen away, roughly 450 feet of which falling into the 15-feet-deep waterway below. The initial scene was overwhelming, and many were understandably panicked. Motorists nearing the span that had just collapsed began turning around and driving away frantically. Those on board the bridge's now precarious approach spans that were left still standing began fleeing their vehicles as virtually everything in their field of vision had just dropped away instantly as they were commuting, and into a cloud of dust, chaos, and confusion below.
Folks, we're looking at a surreal scene right now. Just to bring you up to date, this is the 35W bridge over the Mississippi River. It has collapsed. By our crew's estimates,
Citizen first responders on the scene numbered over 100 plus. Construction workers just then leaving and arriving for their shift, students and staff from the nearby University of Minnesota campus, medical personnel from the nearby Red Cross building, in addition to many brave passers-by, many of which entering the river, pulling construction workers and motorists they could reach to safety. The collapse took place at roughly 6 p.m., and by 6:10, as the first Minneapolis police and fire units began to arrive, eventually totaling 19 fire engines, a command post was quickly established by authorities in the Red Cross building's parking lot nearby. By 6:14 p.m., the Hennepin County Sheriff would be the first to arrive on the water and begin conducting rescue operations in those areas where stricken vehicles had been trapped in the river. Hennepin County Medical Center initiated its disaster plan, calling in more medical personnel, readying local hospitals, and dispatching all ambulances available to the rescue site. The Sheriff's Office would establish their River Incident Command Center by 6:25 p.m. on the north bank of the river near the University of Minnesota's River Flats.
Infrastructure funds are critical. Deb?
Yeah, yikes. Bridge collapse is no small matter. People lost lives and were injured and property damaged. The Minneapolis, St. Paul area was devastated for a very long time. That's certainly something that we never want to see anything even similar to that happen here in this state. And yet there are 377 bridges in the state of Montana that need to be repaired. Thanks to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, though, that just passed, Montana has been allocated billions of dollars over the next 10 years to fix some of these bridges. Hopefully all of them are highways. It's going to address cyber, border, fire security, water delivery systems, and a lot more. As I researched the infrastructure bill, I was reminded over and over of other federal funds that have come into this state and continue to. I was also reminded over the past many years of something I've heard from several people, and that is, we don't want federal money. We don't need federal money. But of course, most of us here know that we absolutely can't function without federal money. And so I thought at the beginning, although we are focused on infrastructure, that our scope should be broadened to bring to people's minds how much federal funding the state of Montana gets. As Mindy mentioned, we have a biannual budget in Montana of $16 billion, 9.5 of which is federal money. For every dollar that we send to the federal government, the state of Montana is getting $1.38 back, which means we're getting our dollar back plus a little bit more than a third. I'd say that's a pretty good return on an investment. Of course, we have Medicaid expansion in the state. We have lots of nonprofits who get federal grants. And as evidenced by the ad that we put in, this county got infused with approximately $5.6 million. I think that Mineral County got somewhere around 2 million and Lincoln County around 9 million. If I'm wrong, Mindy, you can correct me later. I think that's what it is. So that money went to businesses, schools, nonprofits, and instead of just doing a letter to the editor saying, oh, great, Sanders County got 5.6 million. What does that mean? We thought it would be wise to put in the paper so people can actually see there's something tangible there. This is where the money went. And it really helped our economy at a time when we were experiencing the worst pandemic in 100 years. And on top of that, it happened in the last administration. It happened in 2020. So our focus did get a little broadened here. And I think that we do have an opportunity as far as addressing any divisiveness, that if we can present information in a nonpartisan way, in an educational way, that can be easily verified. People can go to the Department of Commerce website and see all that information from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I understand I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think, as Mindy said, if we put this on YouTube and get some of this information out the best way that we can, maybe we can help to narrow that divisiveness even just a little bit. So that said, I would like to introduce a very short video from our Senator, Senator Jon Tester. Mindy, if you could please cue up the video of Jon Tester, Senator Jon Tester.
Here it comes. Share screen. If you wonder why it takes a little while, in order to share the sound with you, I have a couple of additional hoops I have to go through. So in order to make sure that you can hear this as well. So, okay, we'll restart this. And this is a man for which Montana owes a lot. Here he goes.
Can you restart the volume, please? Can't hear.
Sorry about that. I just heard that the sound was not being shared. So you'll bear with me. This video, I'll start it over again, is just a minute and a half. My apologies.
Today, the President signed my bipartisan infrastructure legislation into law, delivering urgently needed investments to Montana that will support families, small businesses, and help grow our economy for generations to come. This historic legislation will create good-paying Montana jobs. It will ensure that we maintain our competitive edge over China and make sure that our infrastructure needs are met for communities across our state well into the future. I worked closely with Republicans and Democrats for months to negotiate this bill because that's what Montanans expect from their elected leaders, that we put our differences aside and find real, lasting solutions that improve lives in Big Sky Country. This legislation does exactly that. It makes critical investments in Montana's crumbling roads and bridges, expands high-speed internet to every corner of the state, fixes aging water systems, and ensures that Montanans have reliable access to clean water, modernizes our electrical grid for the energy sources of tomorrow, and ensures that our communities are prepared for wildfire seasons, droughts, and floods. This is great news for the Treasure State and great news for America, and I am proud to have worked across the aisle to deliver this for Montana. It's an honor to represent the people of Montana in the United States Senate, and I'll keep fighting every day to defend Montana and keep it the last best place. Today,
Golly.
Well, thank you, Senator.
I'm trying to cut it, yeah.
Thank you, Senator Tester. Now I have the pleasure to introduce our friend and neighbor, Jim Elliott of Trout Creek. He is a former senator, a former representative, former head of the Montana Democratic Party. And as he told me recently, he got his start in public service by being the president, king, excuse me, being king of the Trout Creek landfill, otherwise known as the dump. And so Jim Elliott, Senator Jim Elliott, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Mindy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. That dump story is important. It was my beginning in public service, and I'll tell you how it came about. My driveway is about a mile long, and the last mile of it, and you had to walk it in the spring in the 1980s. And I was walking out one day, and the first half mile of it, or the last half mile if you're going out, I could see somebody coming in. And we met halfway. It was my neighbor and friend, Bob Miller. Bob owned Miller's Market, the store in Trout Creek at the time. I wondered what the hell he was doing walking down my road, and he was curious to why I was walking out. He says to me, Jim, I want you to join the Trout Creek Dump Board. And I put my arm around Bob, and I smiled at him, and I said, Bob, I'd sooner drink muddy water. And that was the truth. But the upshot of it was that I did become a member of the Trout Creek Dump Board, and I became the chairman. I might have done a good job, I might have done a bad job, but what it instilled in me was the need for public service, the fact that 50% of the work that gets done in the United States is done by volunteers. And thirdly, that a dump is infrastructure, and when you lose it, which we were about to do, that was the cap on the story that Bob told me. When you lose it, you don't have much left to take your garbage to. So I'm going to talk today, besides that, about federal money in Montana's budget, about infrastructure, hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure, and some on the federal grants that have come our way and been very helpful. Montana relies an awful lot on federal dollars. In fact, it's 38 to 46% of the state spending, about the highest proportion in the nation, according to a Pew Charitable Trust Foundation report in 2017. 46% is the last data available for that, and that was PON 2017 again. The money that is spent is largely in the area of healthcare and highway construction. In healthcare, the Department of Health and Human Services federal money is $2.222 billion on an annual basis. The Department of Transportation takes in 1.55 billion on a biennial basis. Need to be reminded probably that Montana budgets on a biennial basis, that is a 2-year budget. And so when I identify figures, I'm going to identify them as annual or biannual figures. Federal money match for Medicaid expansion, for instance, is 90 to 10. For every $10,000 the state of Montana puts up, or $10 million, federal government puts up 90 million. For the Department of Transportation, the highways, this is for construction costs only, is an 85 to 15% match. Fish and Game, whether you know it or not, relies for 25% of its budget on federal money. I mentioned infrastructure. There's two kinds. What I call hard, what most people call hard, which is stuff that you can actually hit your head against and hurt yourself. And it's bridges, equipment, what have you. Now, I worked for years as a custom farmer and as a farmer in my own right, and I learned that when you have equipment, you need to keep it running. And the best time to do that is when it's not running, that is when you're not using it. If you don't do that, your equipment falls apart at critical times during harvest. If you're hiring out your equipment, you're working for somebody, you lose their custom. They lose their crops, you lose their custom, and that's pretty much the way that it should be. So one of the things that we're catching up on in Montana and in the United States is what's called deferred maintenance. Now, deferred maintenance, all that is a euphemism for not having the guts to raise taxes or not having the guts to spend money. In business, it's to protect the bottom line. You don't spend money on what you need to spend money on, and you put that into a subcategory called deferred maintenance. In government, it's basically an unwillingness to raise taxes to keep things up to snuff. Now, deferred maintenance is more expensive than fixing things as they go, because one, things fall apart, they deteriorate when you're not fixing them, and two, because of inflation, it costs more to fix them eventually. An example would be highway maintenance. You have, if you notice, my friend Representative Denley Logie from St. Regis used to work in the highway department. I think he spent 40 years on it. And he would tell me about the expansion cracks in the roads getting filled with dirt and not being cleaned out. And because they don't get cleaned out, when the roads freeze, the ice expands, the expansion cracks expand and deteriorate the road further. Part of the reason for that is an unwillingness to spend money on the maintenance portion. And part of the reason for that was that the gas tax needed to be raised to cover that expenditure. Now, the gas tax in Montana was established at 27 cents in 1994. It wasn't raised until 2017. It's going up to 33 cents, I think. Shortly, it was a stepped increase. Now, 27 cents in 1944, if you did 27 cents worth of infrastructure replacement or fixing, cost you 45 cents today. Raising the gas tax in Montana raised $30 million in Montana highway construction funding, and that was matched by $170 million in the federal match. Now, I want to talk a moment about putting debt, about borrowing and bonding to fix things. We bond all the time to build buildings and to do preventive maintenance and things like that. And people say, well, that's putting debt on the shoulders of our children. Well, it may be and it may not be, but if you don't do it, it certainly is putting the responsibility to fix the decay on the shoulders of the children. So you can pay us now, or you can pay us later. Soft infrastructure is basically what I talk about. When I talk about that, I talk about society. Soft infrastructure is anything that benefits society, such as education, healthcare, and public safety. Medicaid expansion is one sterling example of that. And it was presaged in, I think, 2003 by a study by St. Vincent's Healthcare and Billings that projected for every $200,000 spent by the state, which would be matched by $800,000 by the federal government at that time, you could create 21 primary jobs in the healthcare industry. Now, that's from memory, so don't take that as gospel, but it was, I believe, 21 in the primary industry of healthcare, and then some 20 ancillary jobs in other industries that were touched by the healthcare industry. Now, people will say you cannot spend your way into prosperity. Others say money doesn't care who owns it, and money doesn't care who spends it. Money is a tool. Money is a lever to increase the economy. You take a guy like Henry Ford, who was no slouch at doing what he did, and I believe it was 1915, he raised his workers' pay from I don't remember how many hours they worked, but he instituted an 8-hour day at $5 a day. That was unheard of. The average wage at that time, or Ford's wage, I guess, was $2.50 a day. Now, if you know about that, you know there's some controversy about that. It might not be the full story, might not. However, what Henry Ford said, this is a quote, the payment of $5 a day for an 8-hour day was one of the finest cost-cutting moves we ever made. Now back to Medicaid expansion. Bureau of Business and Economic Research at the University of Montana did a study in 2017 about, 2018, I'm sorry, about Medicaid expansion. They estimated at that time that it had created 5,000 jobs on an annual basis, that those jobs paid on an annual basis $260 million in new wages. And incidentally, and counterintuitively, there was a 3% drop in crime, which they attributed to addiction help and mental health services. That pretty much concludes my my dialogue on the subject. I do want to end by talking about the grants to businesses and nonprofits in Sanders County. I'm just going to give some numbers here, and Deb already mentioned them. $5.6 million to Sanders County businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies. In Lincoln County, it was $9.9 million. In Mineral County, it's $2.7 million. Huge increase in our economy. The infrastructure grants, and I don't have the numbers for these. I do, but honest to God, I can't figure out how to read them. Plains water source improvement, Plains wastewater, Thompson Falls wastewater, Thompson Falls drinking water, Trout Creek water system, the Paradise sewer, Lincoln County solid waste, and in Superior, I believe it was a drinking water issue. Millions of dollars spent on those infrastructure projects, which will serve us and serve our children well in our counties. There's some resistance to taking federal money. Listen, $1 of it was ours already. The rest of it, well, friends, it comes from states like Massachusetts, New York, California, and New Jersey. If you can't take that money, well, I don't know what to say about that, obviously. That's my presentation, Mindy. I appreciate the time and the ability to present it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You mentioned Medicaid expansion. As well as all the CARES funding. We obviously don't know the infrastructure funding yet because the deadline for applying for that infrastructure funding comes up in just 2 days. So our local economy will once again be boosted by those applications for those infrastructure funds. And I encourage everyone from here to rattle somebody's cage, to get those infrastructure funds pumping into our economy in Sanders County. With the Medicaid expansion, though, I noticed that Carla Nyman, who's the Chief Financial Officer of our Clark Fork Valley Hospital, is on. And I'm wondering, Carla, I hate to put you on the spot, but I wondered if you wanted to talk about federal funding and how that connects with our hospital, which is so critical, needed, and appreciated in this county. You would have to unmute yourself before you do so. And anyway,
I would. Yeah, thank you, Mindy. And thanks everybody for inviting me this afternoon. I have some slides. There isn't too much on them. Do you want me to share them or? Oh, I'm not hearing you now. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm sorry, I had muted myself.
oh,
I need to, I believe I need to make you a co-host in order for you to share a slide.
that's
So let-
okay. I don't really have that much on them, so I'll just talk about what I had pulled together, but and make it quick. It's hard for me to even imagine what healthcare would look like in Sanders County if it weren't for federal funding. Our local hospital is highly dependent on federal funding and has benefited greatly from federal programs designed to enhance rural health care. First and foremost, we have Medicare, which provides health coverage for senior citizens 65 years and older and the disabled. And when I consider federal funding and the overall impact on healthcare, it reminds me about the debate over the Affordable Care Act and healthcare reform back in 2009 and 2010. And I remember someone saying at that time, I want the government to keep their hands off my Medicare. Well, obviously, the fact is we wouldn't have Medicare without the federal government. Secondly, we have Medicaid, which provides health coverage for low-income populations. And traditionally in Montana, that was pregnant women, children, the elderly, and disabled, because traditionally in Montana, Medicaid coverage was not available for able-bodied adults. That changed with the with Medicaid expansion, and so with that program, we now have able-bodied adults that have incomes less than 138% of the federal poverty level eligible for Medicaid. And I think Jim mentioned this, but Medicaid is a state-managed program, but it's largely funded by the federal government. As we all know, the population in Sanders County tends to be older and of lower income than the Montana average. So in 2020, 76% of Clark Fork Valley Hospital's net patient service revenue was paid by the Medicare and Medicaid programs, 76%. Wow. That percentage is higher than it was before Medicaid expansion was implemented in 2016. And we've seen a corresponding reduction in revenue from commercial insurers and the uninsured while Medicaid increased. And just to give you an idea, that's 76% of 26 million in net patient service revenue that Clark Fork Valley Hospital had in 2020. So when you hear about something like the CMS vaccination mandate on healthcare providers that's currently being challenged at the Supreme Court, which threatens loss of payments from Medicare and Medicaid for non-compliance, you can understand why non-compliance isn't an option for an organization like ours. Other federal funding and federal programs that benefit Clark Fork Valley Hospital, we're a critical access hospital, which is a special licensure designation for small rural hospitals. And it allows us to receive cost-based reimbursement. So we get paid by Medicare and Medicaid based on our cost for providing those services. The construction of our new hospital facility that was completed in 2006 was funded by direct and guaranteed loans through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That was federal funding that helped us to replace the hospital. The majority of our nursing home residents have their nursing home care paid for by Medicaid, and Medicaid is the largest payer of nursing home services in the state. The hospital benefits from the 340B drug discount program that's administered by HRSA. Our Medicaid funding is enhanced by the hospital utilization fee or the bed tax program that's run by the state of Montana. We receive grant funding through SHIP on an annual basis, which is another federal program administered by the state. And we've received substantial federal funding to assist with our COVID response. We participate in the Family Medicine Residency of Western Montana, which receives support from Medicare through funding for resident education. And we have certain medical providers who are able to benefit from federal loan repayment, which assists us in being able to recruit healthcare providers. So that's what I thought about when I worked on this today. I'm sure there are other sources of federal funding. I was asked to specifically talk about Medicaid expansion, and there's no doubt that Medicaid expansion has helped our hospital from the standpoint that it's reduced the number of uninsured in our county. And so most of our patients now have a primary pay source for their care. I looked at the figures today, and in 2015, 5% of our net patient revenue was from the uninsured, and in 2019, that was reduced to 1%. So those are people that have a pay source now for their care. And then Jim mentioned that the federal match for Medicaid expansion is 90%. So for every dollar that the state spends, the feds match $9. For traditional Medicaid, it's just 65%. So Medicaid expansion is a great deal for the state of Montana. But when I think of the benefits of Medicaid expansion for our county, I tend to be more focused on the benefits to the residents of Sanders County and our patients. When Medicaid expansion was first being debated in the legislature, it was anticipated that approximately 1,100 Sanders County residents, or nearly 10% of our population, would qualify. I checked the numbers today, and as of December of 2021, we had 1,458 of our residents were enrolled in Medicaid expansion. That's 12.4%. And I believe the overall Medicaid enrollment in Sanders County is over 2,000, or let's see, I think it was close to 2,000, and it was 16% of our population. Most of the people on Medicaid expansion would be uninsured if it weren't for Medicaid expansion. With their Medicaid coverage, they have access to important health screenings and preventive care. They have access to early intervention for health conditions and mental health. And I can only tell you that one of the most painful things I've experienced in my career is trying to assist patients that are in need of life-altering health care that have no means to pay for it. And that's the situation that people with no health coverage in this country would find themselves in. And it's a tough thing. We've always worked with them. We've always helped them. But if you put Medicaid expansion into that context, I mean, those are 1,458 people in our county that have that coverage to rely on, that can get the same screenings that you and I do to identify, you know, breast cancer, colon cancer, other problems, diabetes and hypertension early before they become really life-threatening problems. So that's all I have.
All you have is so much. And Carla, I mean, we're clear that the people who say we need to return federal funding, we just couldn't, and you couldn't operate without it. That's clear, very clear. And we rely on you and so appreciate having a hospital right here in our own community. I can't tell you. We know you all have been put through the ringer. So thank you for this information. I will say that was a lot to digest. We will be recording it. And so in the next day or two, this recording will get sent out. Actually, I'll probably send the iCloud out to everyone who's in attendance today, but then it'll be further available, as I said, on our website and also Facebook. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for all you do. So, and we're going to finish with questions, but I want to put one more person on the spot. And Gail Surratt is the director for Sanders County Coalition for Families, who's a service agency in definitely a needed area in our county. And we appreciate her being on board with us today to talk about federal funding and what it does for her programming. If you wouldn't mind, Gail, unmute yourself and join us if you would.
Can everybody hear me? All right. Thank you, Mindy and Deb, for inviting me to speak here today. We are a unique program. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We provide services to victims of domestic and sexual assault, child abuse, stalking, as well as victims of other crimes. Jim Elliott is well aware of our services, and I just want to say hi to everybody. We are 100% more or less dependent on grants, federal grants, state grants, local foundations that provide funding for various services. Primarily what we do is provide comprehensive services to victims of crime, which includes working with the courts, peer counseling, housing, hotels, shelter, transitional housing, legal services. You name it, we try to do it. A lot of what we do also is information and referral, so that if we cannot help, we have a wide network of information so we can put victims of crime in touch with those agencies or individuals that could help them. Our overall annual budget, and this is for July 21 through June 22, is $866,300, give or take. I would say the majority of this money stays within Sanders County. Personnel alone is $354,000. We employ 10 people. Some of those are part-time. Additionally, we pay a sheriff's detective salary, 100% we reimburse the county for. And we have a contract with Reese Law Group out of Missoula, who provides the actual legal services for the clients who are in need of them. So all those funds, we have 7 different grants, 3 of which are directly sourced from the Department of Justice, Office of Violence Against Women. Those grants total over $600,000. The additional monies are some of which are passed through from the federal government to Montana, and we apply for and are awarded funding through the state, through the Montana Board of Crime Control, as well as the Department of Health and Human Services. So without federal funding, and all of this money stays within Sanders County, except for the legal grant. A small portion gets services are provided in Mineral County as well. But without that federal funding, either direct or pass through, there's no way that we would be able to continue to provide services. SCUF has been around since the late 90s. We have great networking with social agencies within the county. And everybody knows their piece. Law enforcement knows what to do. Medical people know what to do. So without SCUF, services would continue, but certainly not at the level at which they're doing now. We end up serving about 200 people per year. Some are new, some are ongoing, but definitely without this funding, we would not be able to provide the services in Sanders County. Thank you. And if you need anything else, I got tons of data.
We'll let Mariah maybe to give you a follow-up call afterwards for
Sure.
details, but that'd be great. So thank you. And, SCUF provides so many services to Sanders County, as well as the hospital. I wanted to take the opportunity to open it up to any questions. In case you have a question, the easiest way to interact with any of these speakers would be to, John Thorson just raised his hand. You can see it, but down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see reactions. And if you click on that and it says raise hand, it puts you in a queue. So we automatically know, how to call on you. And the other opportunity that you could do, should you not feel comfortable doing that, is you could also type into a chat. And also at the bottom of your screen, you have a chat button that you could do that. So John, you have a question, and I'll let you start us off.
Thank you, Mindy. It's actually a comment. Since we're throwing out a lot of figures, I just wanted to share the figures for Social Security payments within Montana. This is for the year 2019. Social Security payments to Montana residents, $320 million per month. SSI payments, almost $10 million per month. An annual total being almost $4 billion to Montana through those two programs. So it gives you
Annually?
almost $4 billion annually.
Wow.
Thank you.
And Deb Lyman.
I was curious, I looked at the ledger the other day with the list that you had put in on how monies were dispersed in the county. And a few businesses did very, very well. They made a lot of money. And I noticed that Ernie's Housing Organization made maybe $500 on this. And I wondered if anyone had any idea why that was so meager, and some of these other ones for the same person more than once was like in the many, many, many thousands. Does anyone have a clue, or do I need to call Ernie?
Well, I guess I'll let Deb or Jim answer this. My answer is people applied for that CARES money as they chose. And there were different categories that you saw broken down on what they were applying for. And then their specific funding was per their request, as well as perhaps what they were awarded. So Deb, it looks like has an answer to that question.
Yes, Debbie, I think that they actually applied for two grants under two separate categories. I don't have the list in front of me, but if you scrutinize it a little bit more, I think that they got far more than $500 And I'll quick run to my other computer and check that out for you. And if I don't get back, I'll give you a call. How does that sound?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I did want to make a quick introduction of two people. There's two chairs that are on today, not just me, but also from Lincoln County and Mineral County. And so each of you, if you speak, then you'll get into the speaker's box, if you will. But I'd just like you to acknowledge yourself. We are really trying to work together as a coalition of 3 counties to coordinate a lot of different events, actually, this only being one of them. Now Sanders County Dems are taking the lead on it, but Minerals, Sanders, and Lincoln have so many similar demographics, economics, reliance on federal funding. We have different populations, but there's so many things that draw us together that we have really been working together. So if either Diane Magone or Donna Martin could take themselves off of mute and at least say hello to the rest of us to put a face with who you are.
Hi, Mindy. This is Donna. I can't see anybody, but I'm here from Lincoln County, and I've really enjoyed this presentation. I've been wanting to do some similar things with providers in our community, and this was very helpful in getting that going. I really appreciated it, all the speakers and all the information. Thank you for inviting us.
Great, absolutely. And if you go to that website, which I put in the chat, as well as what was in the Sanders County Ledger in the ad, Montana Department of Commerce, you'll realize I didn't want to, I think it's more like 9.5 million that Lincoln County got from CARES. Bradley?
Yes, I did check that out.
Bradley, we get to see a voice and a face with you. So if you would take yourself off of mute.
Hi, Bradley Dunmire. I'm the vice chair from Lincoln County and glad to join you tonight. I had one question. Are you guys doing anything to counteract the press that Gianforte and Rosendale are gaining by saying that they were the ones that got the money for Dillon project and stuff like that? Or is that what the purpose of your ads that you're putting in your local paper?
Purpose of the ad is actually to try to bring unity and to thank those people, those 100 in Sanders County, 169 entities that took CARES funding, that's 2020, and they identify what the funding and what the award was at that time. And you realize that's the previous administration. To try to recognize, we've had a lot of pushback that federal funding is not welcome here. And so that was the main goal of putting in that ad, and to try to also build unity by thanking them for taking that and keeping Sanders County going. And I see that the Montana Dems have a pretty big pushback of Gianforte taking credit and showing himself with that wonderful check in Dillon, when in fact his voting record is and his endorsement is quite the contrary. I don't know that we're going to pick that up. I think the Montana Dems have picked that up pretty well, Bradley. Okay, and Diane Magone, are you on? From Mineral County?
Mindy, it's Donna. I don't see Diane, but I see Dick Darn from Mineral County is here also today.
Fabulous. So maybe we could put a face with Mineral County. Dick, if you can put yourself off of mute and maybe introduce yourself. I thought that I saw that Diane was on, but okay. Thank you, Donna.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Dick.
I don't know how to get the picture on, but you don't need to see me. Well, I guess I'm the only guy from Mineral County, but I agree with you. The ones that holler the loudest about the federal funds, or the ones that got their hands out. So it's pretty hypocritical, but I guess we got to live with it and try to educate everybody.
Again, in order to sway a common sense approach to particularly local governing, I think trying to find ways for unity is the best way to go about it. It's certainly what we're trying. Who knows how that will work. So thank you, Dick, for speaking up. Are there any other questions? I see the press is on here. I don't know if you have any questions specifically for any of the speakers tonight. And if I don't hear from you, I'll assume no. Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for jumping on board and joining us today. Again, the goal of these monthly cinema series is to explore topics that do connect us. There's so much that can politically divide us and then can thus divide us within our community. That I think that it's important to recognize that we all live in the same place, and it's all a terrific place here in rural Western Montana. I also put in a plug. We kind of have Sanders County has an ambitious program coming up this coming year for outreach, including these programs and more. We are on Act Blue. So if you go to your Google and do Act Blue, I'll do my my donation request here and find Sanders County Democrats, and we so appreciate your support. I thank you, Jim Elliott. I thank you, Carla Nyman, and I thank you very much, Gail Surratt, for joining us today and trying to unite us in how federal funds fuel our county. So with that, I will bid you all adieu and end this meeting. And
Thanks, everyone.
thank you
Mindy,
for joining us.
Mindy,
Yes.
it's Deb. Sanders
Bye,
County
Deb.
Housing, Sanders County Housing, Debbie Lyman, under Social Services Nonprofit grant got $16,085.
All right. Way to go. What a great ending. Thank you so much for that bit. Okay. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Mindy.
Good night. Thanks, everybody.